Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome for those of you who are here for the first time. And we have been coming together for the last 4 years or so, every month. And those who have been coming here more regularly have been subject to my whims of what I chose to talk about and discuss. And finally, I realized that that's not a good idea. It takes a long time. And decided that it would be a good idea if we had more of issues raised by everyone here and discussing it together and learning together. These are gatherings that we come together to really answer some of the most fundamental questions of being human. Why we are here, what's the purpose of our life, why things are the way that they are, what about good things, what about calamities, why people behave the way they do. All of those fundamental questions, who am I and why I'm here? And these are the questions that historically have been approached and answered by religions and philosophers and poets and writers and so forth. But in recent years and recent decades, science has come to the forefront and they are trying to answer these questions, and there is a war who has a better answer between all different people and different ideas and different groups. So that's where we are in our world right now. So we thought that it would be a good idea to open our discussion tonight. If some of you wish to pose some thoughts and ideas and questions, 2, 3, 4 of them, and then we discuss them together and to see where it gets us. So, who wants to start?
I have written a whole list.
Okay, we have a whole list. Please, you begin some.
So, I thought we are going to suggest topics that in future you will be talking about it, but it comes to the same thing. So something that I've been thinking about it and trying to find information and deepen myself was about the lesser peace and the great peace.
Yes.
That often we are reading in the especially
Baha'i writings.
So what is the process? How we are going to get there? Are we heading that side? What's the situation of the world, and what is really the proof or the way that the Baha'i faith is going to lead us?
Okay. So the first issue that has been raised here is about how can we establish peace, and what is the Baha'i perspective and approach to that. Any other issues? It shouldn't be necessarily related to the same thing. Yes?
How can we combat the forces of estrangement, apathy, so prevalent in today's society?
They combat the forces of apathy, you mentioned?
And estrangement.
And estrangement.
So prevalent in today's
That's right. Okay. And?
In your topic of the family, how we're trying to progress from power-based families, identity-based families to unity-based families. What does that look like in a unity-based family? Because children are still, there is a hierarchy in a family.
Mm-hmm.
How are the roles, how does it look? It's very clear when I think of a power-based, what it looks like. If I think of identity-based, there's a lot of competition.
That's right.
Unity-based, how do we handle it.
How to handle that, okay. Okay, so far 3 issues have been raised. One, how to create peace. Second, which is related to that, how we can deal with to better understand the reasons for estrangement and apathy that exists in our world and what can we do about it. And the third is how to create families that are peaceful and united. And of course, in the family, you have children and you have adults and you have different ideas and how to create the balance between them. Okay, any other person wants to, dying to ask, bring the issue up?
Come on, Joyce. We know.
Nothing brilliant is coming to mind.
Okay.
I can add one more.
All right, add one more and then we go on.
Equality in the family. Equality, or maybe respect in the family.
That's right, equality and respect in the family.
How do we deal with the political and social climate of our times? How do we deal with it? It's very stressful. It can become very exhausting and very stressful. How do we deal with that? Where do we put it?
Turn off the news.
I know.
So the question exactly is how to deal with dynamics of conflict in the family? Is that what you're saying?
No, political.
Political.
Political and social
All right.
climate of our day.
Our days.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I share some thoughts and then we discuss it together. Is that okay? I think to understand all of these issues, we have to go back to the fundamental laws that govern life. Okay? And in human relationships, 2 fundamental forces and laws are in operation all the time. One is love, which is a process that brings people together, attracts people to one another, makes us to get closer, to establish relationship, to take away estrangement, to create peace between people. In all of these, what we need is love. And love, of course, people describe it in different ways. If, for example, we were going to go around here and ask everybody to define love, we would see that we have similar and different definitions about love. So, the fundamental way to understand love is to see what is the fruit of love. What does it mean when we have love? What happens when people have love? And the fruit of tree of love is unity. When there is love, people get united with each other. They come together with each other. They accept each other's diversity and differences and uniqueness. This is the way love shows itself. Love is the force of unity, is the force that creates unity. And unity, of course, becomes the force that creates everything. Nothing can really exist without unity. We have talked about that before, and I mention again, unity is the fundamental law of existence. Everything that exists is the outcome of the operation of the law of unity. For example, at the material level, it is the unity between different components of atom and subatomic particles and so forth that this structure of the world, physical world, continues the way that it is. And the force that brings, one of the forces that bring them together, let's say magnetic force, for example, is the physical expression of love. Magnetic force at the physical level is equivalent to love at the human level. Okay? And law of unity also applies to living beings. Every living organism is alive because of unity between different components and parts of it. And every society, every family, and every society is able to function and continue because the law of unity is operating in it. And the greater the level of unity is the greater level of cohesion and health of that organism. Whether it is an individual, whether it is family, the community, the whole world. So here we have issues of love and unity coming together and making every aspect of life better and more conducive to progress and development and growth. Now, in human relationships, there is another force also operating all the time. And that one is the force of power. Human relationships is a balance of love and power. They are constantly in interaction with each other. And power is a very interesting phenomena because it focuses on one of the most important aspects of being human, namely that we are at the core of our being insecure. We feel insecure. We human beings are aware that we do not have ultimately complete and total power in our lives. We need to sleep, we need to eat, we need food that other people produce, we need air, and we need good health, and we know that we don't have control over most of these things. And we know that in the end we are going to die. And because of that, we feel at the core of our being there is a sense of insecurity. That insecurity is not always conscious, but usually when there is a calamity, when there is a problem, when there is a difficulty, we become aware that we many times are helpless and hopeless in face of a challenge in life. And that makes us frightened. And when we are frightened, we think by having power, we would decrease our fear. And therefore we seek power to fight off our fears and our insecurity. And because the law of nature is the law of constant survival issue. People have to survive. And there is a survival of the fittest dynamic going on in our world. Because of that, in this world, we always, historically, people have tried to put power ahead of love. In human history, because our ancestors were not in possession of knowledge, and much understanding, and because the forces of life were so frightening and so dangerous, there was a disease, they didn't know what to do about it. There was all kind of changes in the climate, and they didn't know what to do, and they were strangers, and they didn't know what to do with those. And because of all of these dynamics, power became the main focus, main object of the quest of people. And because power was in the area first in the context of family between men and women, and because men were usually physically more powerful, they took over. And they assumed power and control. And gradually a system of family structure and societal structure developed based on the dynamics of power and domination and control. And that resulted in inequality between men and women. That resulted in creation of systems of organization of family and community that were authoritarian, that you had somebody who was the boss and controlled and told others, and love became conditional upon power. In other words, the powerful person would say, I love you if you obey me. If you do what I want you to do, I love you. And if you don't, then you're going to be punished and you're going to be deprived. Okay? So this has been the dynamics of relationship for a long, long time. And it is like a child and parent relationship, a parent and child relationship. That the parent says to the child, you obey me, I love you. Okay? But the child wants to be loved, so challenges the parent to see whether if he disobeys the father or the mother, whether the child still would be loved or not. So many a times children deliberately challenge the authority of the parent because they don't want to be loved conditionally. They want to be loved unconditionally. So they check and say, let me see whether the parent loves me really. If so, I will disobey and to see what happens.
That could be subconsciously, right?
These are at a intuitive level. It is functioning at the intuitive level, The children are very smart, but smart not in the sense that they can verbalize it, but smart in the sense of that they feel it. They sense it. And therefore they respond to that dynamics. So this dynamics of love and power has been in human relationship, shaping human relationships throughout history. Okay? And at the grand level, it creates governments and the structures of society and the structures of religion and the structures of family, that they are all authoritarian. And you have people in the position of power, controlling others. And when power comes into human relationships, estrangement happens. Because people don't want to be forced to do things. And they become distant. And those that are really feeling powerless, they feel apathetic. They feel hopeless. They feel helpless. They say, there is no hope, you know. So that begins to happen at all levels. These dynamics are related to a fundamental law of life. You see, life is governed by three laws. Law of unity. The other one is law of growth. Everything that is alive has to grow. If you stop the growth of a living organism, it gradually withers and becomes apathetic and eventually dies. Growth is essential for life. You see, it's one of the main characteristics of life, aside from unity, is growth. Unity maintains life, creates life, and maintains life. Growth develops life. Okay? And humanity, human societies also are living organisms. So societies collectively grow in the same way human individuals grow. Families grow. Okay? So the three descriptions of the families that you gave, survival, identity, and unity, these are the three levels of growth of the family, maturation of the family. The same thing is for the society. Societies grow. And in the earlier growth, level of growth is like childhood. Power is the main force in human relationships, authoritarian dynamics, and so forth. The next level, societies become adolescent. And the adolescent age of humanity, society, social adolescence, probably started in its most clear way around the time of 7th century, 6th, 7th century. That's the time that Christianity began to have Protestant and Catholic division. That's the time that Islamic religion came.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You mean the 15th century, right?
No, 6th, 7th century.
Even Martin Luther was
Much later.
yeah.
But the beginning of the adolescence of the society began around that time. Okay, it came to a more definite level in Christianity in 15th, 16th century, and then it became to full blown in the 19th century. 19th century really was a total eruption of adolescent mentality in the West, and by that matter, in many parts of the world. And then it continued to 20th century and now 21st century. We live in an adolescent world. The political conditions that you see in the world right now are actions of juvenile leadership. And you see it. You see it through, for example, what is the best and the most refined form of government that we have created. The most refined forms of government are multi-party, adversarial democracy, right? Mm-hmm. Look what is the character of democratic systems that we use right now. Competition to the end, winning and losing. we are the best, they are the worst. What are these the characteristics of? Characteristics of an adolescent age. What is the greatest scandal that we have nowadays? Scandals of power, scandals of sex and abuse, or what? Extremes of wealth and poverty. These are all examples of a world of humanity in a state of its collective adolescence. And one of the characteristics of collective adolescence is power, but not in the form of authoritarian power, but in the form of power struggle. You see, power struggle. Still, human relationships running according to the rules of power. The only difference is that in the authoritarian system, one group, a small group of people or one dictator controls everybody and has power over the lives of everybody. In the multi-party democratic societies that we have created, is that there is a power struggle. Still, power is the predominant force of human relationships. And one of the problems with power is that it creates conflict. And when it creates conflict, you do not have peace. Okay? So, because one law of life is law of growth, it means that we have moved from our collective childhood and we are now in the final stages of our collective adolescence. What baha'u'llah, what the Baha'i faith talks about, is it shows the ways how to move from our collective adolescence and collective childhood to an age of maturity. The main characteristic of age of maturity is that we will be able to replace the power orientation with love orientation. Or put it differently, power orientation and power struggle orientation with unity in diversity orientation. When we begin to do that, when we begin to learn how to communicate with each other through harvesting the forces of love and relating to each other as unique human beings who are united, when we learn to do that, then we are on our path to peace. It is impossible to create peace until we do that. So, yes.
Do you think many of these movements, these activists and their movements now, are and the forces working against them, the voices who proclaim we want to accept everyone, we embrace diversity.
That's
diversity is strength. We hear those messages
That's
loud
right.
and clear. But the forces working against them is kind of the last gasp of this part of our evolution.
Exactly. That's exactly what is happening. These are the last gasps of dictatorial, authoritarian, and adversarial modes of relationship and governance, be it between religions, between religion and science, between political forces of our world, between men and women, between different races, every area that you think of it. This is the process. And you see the dynamics of development from one stage to another stage are very interesting, because development is inevitable, we have to grow, otherwise we die, okay? Because we have to grow and we have to develop, everybody in the world, the whole world, is growing. But there are two levels of growth, conscious and subconscious. Majority of humanity and majority of those movements are striving for going to the next level of unity of humanity, oneness of mankind, oneness of humankind. We are all want to go there, okay? But because we are not fully conscious of that, we mix it with the old habits of power and power struggle, and that's the reason that they become militant, and suddenly they lose their potency because they started with love and they suddenly power comes in. You see, that's what happens. But they are all wanting to do, but it's not a conscious movement towards it. What Baha'is do, Baha'i teachings do, is inviting humanity to consciously and deliberately and purposefully move towards unity. Because all religions are fundamentally the same. They have the same message, a spiritual message. True science and true religion are fundamentally in harmony with each other. All humanity are fundamentally the same, and we all want to do the same and achieve the same. This is the law of existence. We are all moving toward the same thing. But it is one thing to move towards something unconsciously, subconsciously, autonomously. It is another thing to do it consciously, deliberately, purposefully. Okay? That's what Baha'is are inviting people to do. Let us consciously and deliberately move towards creating what we want to create, which is ultimately create a united, harmonious, progressive civilization of peace. That's what we want to do. All of us want to do, you know. Put it in the language of the religion, to establish kingdom of earth, kingdom of God on earth. To put it in the language of politics and political science is to create a progressive, peaceful, and wealthy, affluent civilization of peace. Okay, these are what we want to do. We all want, you know, we are moving to that direction. Is the conscious, deliberate way of doing it, which is actually the third law of life. I said life has three laws: law of unity, law of growth, and the third law of life is law of creativity. We are creative beings. Actually, if life wasn't creative, we become apathetic. Apathy happens when people are not creative, when environments are not creative. Creativity means focusing on a phenomenon and searching different ways of dealing with this phenomenon in the most healthy, most progressive, most beautiful way. And different people would come at it with different angles, but they all end at the same place. So, to go to the question about peace, in the Baha'i writings, the dynamics of movement of humanity towards peace is an ever greater expansion of human consciousness, so that we can create certain necessary conditions for peace. Peace by itself is the outcome of a condition of unity. When people are united, diverse people are united with each other, not in the uniformity, but unity in diversity, okay? Uniformity is like American, you see, the American experiment is a very important experiment, and we are a part of North American experiment, okay? But it was somehow differently happened in the United States and in Canada. In America, in the United States, the original idea was to create a melting pot. Okay?
Now they want it white again.
What was melting pot? Melting pot was let everybody to come here, and we put them in a pot, and we boil them, and then everybody comes up American. Okay? And everybody would be the same, everybody would become. So at the beginning, when the Irish and European basically came, they all looked the same. So putting them in a pot and cooking them together wasn't all bad because they came out basically the same. The only group that they didn't, the two groups that they didn't, were the blacks and, well, the Spanish still were not involved, and the Aboriginal, the indigenous people. They didn't. But we decided, the Americans decided that they are not subhuman, they are not human. So still there was the hope that melting pot would happen. That is the idea of unity in uniformity. We wanted to create a uniform society. Doesn't work. Because suddenly, the same thing happened under communism. You see, I worked for many years in my peace program in Bosnia-Herzegovina, okay? So, for example, Bosnia-Herzegovina, former Yugoslavia, under Marshal Tito, became a united country of at least three diverse populations. Bosniaks, who were Muslims, Croats, who were Catholics, and Serbs, who were Orthodox Christians. And for 50 years, under Marshal Tito, they lived together peacefully, okay? And they even intermarried, and the religion was put aside, and they were all very nice together and so forth. But there was one condition that Tito put. He said, be harmonious with each other or I'll kill you. Okay? This was an authoritarian system, okay? The authoritarian system said, be harmonious.
My way or highway.
That's right, or I kill you. So they were harmonious. So when Marshal Tito died, what happened? They got all again at each other because the diversity issue that had been pushed down came to the forefront. Okay? So in United States, when the melting pot phenomena failed, so what happened the next? The emphasis was on diversity, not on unity. So suddenly the society was divided. African American, Spanish American, Persian American, Chinese American, Korean American, non-American, 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 okay? Suddenly everybody was divided, and this is the way they are right now. It's totally focused on division, on differences, not on oneness, on differences. This has been the two experiments in United States and to a lesser degree in Canada, okay? The idea is United States and Canada are important profoundly important because they are the places when all races of humanity have come. And this is the experiment of humanity to learn how to create a new generation, new race of humanity that totally integrated with each other. It is united and it's diverse and it's unique, but it's also the very, very connected and harmonious
Do you
together.
think Canada did a better job of it than
Well,
the
it took a different little bit of route, but basically, yes, was less extreme than and because we didn't have a slavery issue, okay, because we didn't have an issue of a slavery, and so it became a little bit yes.
Meanwhile, you speak about unity, where we're going, and society as a whole is going. But unity implies that it's a two-way street. Both parties want to unite, right? You talk about the biology in the body. Everything has to work. They want to work with each other. And we live in a society where not everybody wants to work with you. And rather, they'd rather have power, have their own justice. And, as a Baha'i, who we try to be unifiers, sometimes it's hard to find how to deal with individuals who don't want to reciprocate.
Well, yes and no. You see, because we are all subject to the law of growth, or put it differently, because we do not have a choice but to grow up. Okay? We don't have a choice. We either grow up consciously, deliberately, purposefully, as individuals, as families, as societies, or we repeat our mistakes over and over and over until finally we realize that we have to do things differently. Okay? So because of that, and because unity by itself is a profoundly powerful force and process, when you act as a unifier, the individual may not respond to you right away, that way, but ultimately would be affected. Okay? A good example of that about issue of different approach having a profound power was what Gandhi did. Okay? Logically, you would think that if you are dealing with an army, you will arm yourself, right? And this is the way of power struggle in the world. Gandhi said, in the front of the army, you go without the arm. In the face of violence, you go with love. Okay? Actually, he didn't say with love. Gandhi didn't go all the way. He said, in the form of violence, you go with non-violence. Okay? And it had a profound power because he won.
And there's only one person in human history who followed his example that I know of.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King, exactly. You see what happened, look at what happened with Martin Luther King and Gandhi's movements. Both of them were successful while those people were alive.
Yeah.
And it went down, its effectiveness, when they died. Why? Because they didn't go far enough. Okay? Non-violence requires violence in order to be non-violent. Okay? While in the Baha'i faith says, no, you go through route of unity. Okay? So it's a very different process. You asked about peace. I'm just on page 222 of my new book, Writing on Peace. Okay? Okay? But it's the first draft. It's the first draft, and you have to be patient, okay? But, yes, please.
Could you just expound on the violence? You need to have violence to reach nonviolence. Could you just?
Yeah, you see, when violence was taking place, Gandhi said, we do not act with violence. And Martin Luther King also did that, and a few others have done that, okay? And when you do that, with the very fact that you act non-violently, it touches the violent individual in front of you at a deeper level of consciousness than otherwise that person is aware of. You see, when people are violent, they are agitated. But human beings, at the core of their beings, are good beings. At the core of their beings, they want to be loved, and they want to be good. All human beings, at the core of their being, they want to be good, and they want to be loved. So when somebody responds to them, to their violence, non-violently, it touches them at a deeper level of their soul. Okay? And it inhibits their violence. And that's exactly what happened with the British Army. Okay? And with the police and all kind of political systems that were in the United States watching what was happening with Martin Luther King. It touched the consciousness of people at a very deeper level, okay? So that's the power of nonviolence. Now, the power of unity goes one step deeper, okay? The power of unity is that regardless of how that person is, whether he is violent or not violent, you still relate to them in the spirit of unity and fairness and justice and love. In other words, you become the emblem of love and justice and kindness and compassion. And when you as an individual become that way, it affects other people. Some people are affected very much, very soon. Some people are affected much later in their lives, but still are affected. And that's what goes to the question that you were raising. The issue is not that you have to look for response on other people when you are trying to be an agent of unity and love and cooperation and kindness and compassion. You act that way regardless of whether the others respond to it positively or not. Because in the long run, you're affected. You may not see it, but they are affected.
What would it actually look like? The difference, okay, you talk about the difference between responding to violence with non-violence. And I have this image in my mind, I watched the movie Gandhi many times, of all these Indian people getting beaten all day long by these British soldiers, okay, and carried away in stretchers. And then you say, and so that was violence being greeted by non-violence. And then you say you could take it one step deeper and approach it with unity. What would that look like?
Okay.
How would that look different?
Okay. The Baha'i faith started in Persia,
Right.
okay, in 1844. Since then, the Baha'i community has been subject to
Right.
violence. Some 24,000 Baha'is over these centuries have been killed. Many, many imprisoned. Enormous torture and problems has happened. And since the Islamic Republic, Baha'is have been killed, imprisoned. Many of my friends, my classmates, my teachers, my students have been imprisoned and killed during the last 30 years. Okay? They have the Baha'i youth in Iran are not admitted to universities. They are not allowed to study. Baha'is who were working for the government have been all expelled. The businesses that Baha'is are established are taken over by the government. The government has been systematically trying to exterminate the Baha'i community in Iran.
Sounds nice.
Okay? Yes. And what Baha'is have done in response? Baha'is have not taken arms. They have not done any unlawful activity. They have established an open university. It's called Baha'i Institute of Higher Education. That professors that have been expelled from universities because they were Baha'is go to the homes of Baha'is in different cities in Iran and hold classes and teach students. And these students at the university level, and these students then come out and have been accepted at universities across the world to continue their master's and PhD degrees. Okay? Baha'is have, because their businesses have been taken over, they have established collaboration between each other and helping each other. This is what they are doing, and at the same time they have gone to the government and they have gone to legal systems and they have gone to international community and they are asking for help through this medium. Okay? This, and at the same time they have made open statements that they are lovers of Iran, lovers of Iranian society, that they are proud that the Baha'i faith emerged from there and now is all over the world. And they are lovers of Islam because the Baha'i faith has profoundest respect and acceptance of the verity of Islam and of Christianity and of Judaism and of Zoroastrian faith and of Buddhism and of all religions of the world. So that has been the example of a Baha'i community of almost 500,000 people in Iran functioning in that manner for 30 years of systematic persecution by the government, and not one episode of violence has happened, and many episodes of love and affection has happened. That's the way it would work.
They never marched.
They haven't done any of those things. The idea is that, and that as a result, now gradually the people in Iran are beginning to back Baha'is against their government. And they say, why we are doing that? You see, it touches the consciousness and the conscience of people at the most profound level. That's what it does. You know. Yes, please.
Even to add to your things that you mentioned, Baha'is even in Iran, in the prison, I heard that one of the prisoners wrote a letter to his child in out of prison and said, don't even hate these people.
Of course, of
even
course.
don't put any hatred in your heart.
Yes.
if you like me, if you love me, even the torturer that tortured me, you just interrogators, and just did the bad
Yeah.
things to me, don't hate him.
Well,
And love, because hypocrisy in the Baha'i faith is forbidden. If you're saying I love you, I like you, in your heart, you should do the same thing.
that's right.
You can't. This is the difference between violence, and just sometimes you show that. Okay, I'm not fighting with you. You showing, but Baha'i is saying that even your heart,
Yes.
love them if you are acting as a
That's
person
right.
that you're.
In other words, there is a unity between what you think, what you feel, what you do, what you believe, your moral standards, your behavior, everything is in a state of unity.
Exactly.
And that's the power of unity.
And that takes time.
Yes,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. Maturity growth takes time. You see, you can.
Marching on the street.
That's right. You
Tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a sign of impatience, a sign of adolescence, you see.
Right.
And we are all adolescents, and we are evolving and we are moving towards that next level.
And the counterpart of the unity, which is in the spiritual world, unity is in spiritual, it's not material thing. The counterpart in the material world of unity, as Baha'i said, is a light. The abdu'l-baha said the light of
Light,
unity.
of course.
Light
Yeah.
shows you, discover things.
Yeah.
If you have a light, you can see things.
Yeah. Well, that's a very important point that you brought up here, because love and unity, they're like light. Love is like light. And light is a very interesting phenomenon because it shows both the positive and the negative. Okay? When you have light, you see everything. Okay? Under light of the sun, you have the rose and you have the thorn. Okay? They both grow. Okay? So everything shows its nature, its true nature under the light. The same thing is with respect to question that you asked about love. Is that, or unity and how to do it, is that when you are acting in compassionate, harmonious, loving way to other people, it doesn't mean that everybody will respond the same way. Some would respond positively. Many would get confused. They wouldn't know what is this all about, And some would be actively against you. Okay? When we started our peace program in the schools of Bosnia-Herzegovina many years ago, we taught students about love, unity, and diversity, and all the other aspects of peace. And then we asked every classroom in every school, every semester, to put on a presentation about the application of one of the laws of peace to life. Okay? And it was a very huge festival. And students would come from kindergarten and to grade 12 to make presentations together, drama and art and music and dancing and everything, trying to describe the characteristics of different aspects of peace. And the first time that it happened, that we, about several hundred students and parents and teachers and everybody came together from different groups. There were presentations, and there were 3 groups of presentations, which was very interesting. Because we had given the lessons And we then tell them, now you try to understand and do it. And, and then at the end of semester, you present what you have learned. So when the presentations happened, one group was right on. They had beautiful presentations on unity and diversity, on gender equality, on harmony of all religions with each other, on harmony of humanity, oneness of humanity, and so forth. One group in the middle was totally confused. They didn't know what to do. Some this idea and that idea and this song and that song. And one group was totally exactly the opposite of those principles. We are the greatest, they are our enemies, we have to fight them, and so forth. And when the program ended, the parents of the other two groups went to the teachers and tell them, why didn't you teach our children that thing? Why you teach our children this junk? We have just gone, we have just come through a war and we have killed each other. We don't want our children to do the same thing. Why did you do that? Anyway, dear friends, not everything was answered tonight, but I think we touched upon most of everything. And I think we should end now. What time is it?
9:45.
Yeah, I think it's about the time for the enrichment of your souls with two performances.